All right, I'll call this session to order. I'd like to make the following statement. Beginning with acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Today, on our panel, we have Neil Harden and Cindy Stevens. The secretary for the board today is Bella Rojo, and the assessor today is Merrick Frolick. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And could I remind you and myself to mute your phones or turn them off? With that, could we have the swearing in, please? So the property that we have as our subject is 333 St. Mary Avenue. We have, I am correct, the liability to taxation, amount of assessed value, and classification of property are all under appeal. Is that correct? Yeah. So let us start with the assessed value. And Mr. Frolick, could you begin, please?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe we need a bit of a story on this one.
No problem. I'll start off with the file number and roll number, and then I'll get into more details there. File number is 18707. The roll number is 120933844100. The owner is the Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation. And as we had mentioned before, there's two liability statuses for this property. One of those is exempt, the other one is taxable. Based on the 2018 board decision initially that had taken place, the total assessed value was $77,248,000 or $249,000. And we're seeking an increase because there has been some changes that have taken place. The leasable area has increased because, and the institutional portion of the value has increased as well because what has taken place is there's been a new daycare being built within the city place. So in the past, the daycare was in an area that was used for parking, and that new area has status, and that had added 11,000 square feet to the subject property. And so from that status and with regards to the evaluation of the board decision that had taken place, we're here to discuss the value and the department seeking an increase to $87,866.
87 million.
87 million, thank you. All the zeros. So that's it in a nutshell. Would the board want any other clarification for that, or can I start with my presentation?
Any questions on that clarification?
Okay. So what we have here is 333 Mayor's Avenue, City Place. It consists of three significant components. There's the OFB portion of it, which is the main offices for the MPIC employees for the downtown head office. There is a retail component, which has the Boston Pizza, the Shark Club, a food court, and various other services like the National Liquor Commission. And there's also a parking structure. So those are the three main components of this building. And the only difference is now is that there's two for the liability status of it for the OFB, there's a taxable and an exempt portion of it. So the taxable portion of it would be the normal business side of things. The exempt portion would consist of, the areas consisted of the City of Winnipeg 311's office there, and also the daycare status. Original building was built in 1916, and the effective age is run from 1945 to 2018. The wall heights are varied throughout the building. Construction classes be reinforced concrete frame. Zoning's multiple use. Land area is 131,693. The gross floor area is 593,502, and the new leasable area is 492,155. And the main difference here between this and the old appeal that we had earlier on this year was that the new area for the daycare. And the daycare consists of 11,000 square feet, approximately 11,000 square feet. Page 2 shows an aerial view of where it's located at. So it's just directly south of the Bell MTS Center. And there was an old Eden's Place at one point, but it's not called City Place. The portion of the building here on page 3 gives you two aerial views. The circular portion is where the parking structure is, and there's a combination of indoor and they're both all the parking structure, but there's heated and unheated areas in there. And the retail component consists mostly of the first the first floor, second floor. There's the office portion of it, and then there's the food court area. City Center is accessed by the skywalk on all values, and it's also in the shed district. And page 3 and 4 just shows general pictures of it. So because it's such a diverse property, I'll be going a bit through different areas. So if you need to ask me any questions at any time for clarification, please do so. Applicant has fulfilled their commitments for the income and expense mailers. There's no issue there. Some sales history information. So on March 19th of 2003, it had sold for $47 million. Approximately 6 years later, in May of 2009, it sold for $66,672,000, or $673 approximately, which is approximately 8 years away from the reference date. And what is also interesting is the price of that real estate after the economic slowdown that took place in 2008, 2009, real estate prices had dropped at that time. So on page 5, I'm going to be looking at the subject property leases that they have for the food court portion of it.
Just before you do that, small point of confusion for me here. A supplementary was sent out for this property in order to add that additional 11,000 square feet for the daycare center. And did you say that space was formerly part of the parking
it was
structure?
Because it's a very unique property, because if you go onto the service side of things on the third floor, it's in an area where the daycare is it's not like in the main part of the retail component of it. It's not in the office component of it. So where the people go to get off their cars and drop their cars off to go to work, it's in that portion. It's on the third floor. So when you get off the third floor elevators, and this is towards the south side of the building, like towards where the old, part of the, because there's access to the office towers from two levels at the MTS Center. There's a north side where the tobacco area was, where there was the Maggie Hills Tobacco, and on the back side by the rec stall, there's the back elevators there. And so what happens is to gain access to the daycare, it's on the 3rd floor, so you take the 3rd floor out, and then immediately on the right-hand side, that's where there's a brand new daycare that was built.
Okay. So,
That's-
I just wanted to try to, like, you were mentioning the supplementary isn't for the daycare. What happened was, we had the assessment reduced to the 77,248,000 with no exemptions. We had been asking for a daycare exemption for the last 2 or 3 cycles. It's not a new daycare, the permits were taken out in 2010. What happened is we reduced the assessment at the Board of Revision, then the city passed a bylaw exempting all spaces occupied by City of Winnipeg departments from taxation. So the assessment department issued a supplementary notice effective February 1 of 18, exempting the 311 space, but putting the assessment back up to the original value of 85 million. You know, disregarding the board's order of 77 million. We complained to the city assessor and he agreed that they didn't have rights by legislation to do that. They have to follow the board order. And at the same time, we were finally able to get the daycare it's basically a government daycare for the public, Manitoba public employees' children. And so then the assessor issued a supplementary with the assessment back to 77,248,000, but exempting the City of Winnipeg space for the 311 and the daycare space. And then they appealed their own supplementary. And now they're asking for an increase up to 88 million. So the appellant is actually the city.
that's, sorry,
Yeah.
that is what was leading to my
Yeah.
confusion
Yep.
here.
Yeah.
And I sort of hadn't heard that explained
Okay, no problem.
by you, Mr. Froelich. Can you go back, to the history?
Okay.
Why did it follow this history, just so that we're...
Why did it follow the history? Because of the request by the applicant to get the daycare status exempt. So from that position forward, that's where the new supplemental had taken into existence.
So that was done by supplementary in
Okay,
order
that
to
wasn't
change
the
the
reason.
liability.
Yeah.
That wasn't the reasoning. We had asked for the daycare to be exempt two cycles ago.
Yeah.
We didn't push the supplementary. When the city got exempted the city place, the city portion for the 311, instead of taking it to the board order value, they took it back up to their original value. And then we complained, and then the city assessor agreed that we were in the right. And then at the same time, before issuing the new supplementary, we were able to get the daycare.
So the supplementary accomplished the reduction back down to the 77 and the liability, the proper liability on the daycare.
Right, for the daycare and the city Winnipeg stores.
Okay, so that's what the supplementary did.
Right.
You did not appeal the supplementary.
No.
You've appealed the
Yeah,
supplementary.
because initially what had happened is in December 2017, when this property was heard, there was no exemptions, the entire building was taxable. So when we made the adjustments to make changes to the property, it gives both the applicant and the assessment department the opportunity to seek what we believe is a fair value. And so once the supplemental and once we changed the liability status to be true to the actual of the building, it provided us the opportunity to look for what we feel is a fair value for this property.
So why did the supplementary not increase the value? Why did you retain it at the board-ordered value and instead you
Because of all the
appealed?
history and all the different people involved with the process, and because if everything would have stayed as status quo from the cut that had taken place on the 2018 realty, we would have appealed that at the municipal board. But because there was a supplemental, and because the applicant was fine with the value, we weren't fine with the value of it, so we need to go through this procedure to take it to the municipal board.
So you decided to put it to the board-ordered level even though you weren't satisfied
Exactly.
with it. He would not obviously appeal that.
Yeah.
So you're not happy with that
No,
value,
but
so
we
you have
can't,
now
I
appealed
can't
in order to
appeal
get
the
back
last
up.
one because there's been a supplemental.
Yeah.
You can't appeal the original, okay.
Exactly,
All right.
which is why we have to go through this
Oh, okay,
procedure.
okay, okay. Yeah.
See, basically, what the legislation says is you can only change the assessment if there's been a change to the property. Change in liability doesn't change the value, it just changes the taxable portion. So that's why they had to keep it at the 7,7,248.
Okay. Sorry.
You know, it's, Doug and I had this conversation, we knew what was happening here, so.
But, and the other thing that made it sketchy was the owners never got the supplementary.
Okay.
And to this date, they've never been able to find the original February 1, 2018 supplementary notice. And we didn't find out about the increase back to the original until they sent us their 19 assessment notice to review. And we noticed that it was back up. So this is all going now back to January 1 of 18.
Okay.
So it's a fresh slate, but I think they should withdraw, but I don't think they will.
Well, because of course you should, but in our opinion of value, that's why we're here.
All right, so we're here for another kick the
Okay.
cat.
Yeah.
Subject property leases. So what's interesting to note here, as we go through the process, is that, so different businesses, there's Maku Walks, Sushi June, Subway, Samosa, Mrs. Vanilli's, McDonald's, Tim Hortons. The average portion of it, for this first page, is the average rented per square foot is $66.29. Then the next page shows the retail portion of it. And the retail portion shows like Shark Club, Stitch Taylor, A&W, Pharma Drugs, Boston Pizza, City Place Orthotics, CIBC, Marlin Travel, wide variety. And our average retail space is $24.08. Now, for the OFB portion of it, because the majority of the space is owned and occupied by Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation, there's virtually no vacancy in this building. And the two tenants that are in here are the City of Winnipeg at 11,000 square feet at $13 net square feet, net per square foot. And the Urban Wellness Center at 6,809 square feet at $12. So those two OFB spaces that we have here are $12.62.
So just to clarify, when you say there's no vacancy, you're talking about the office portion?
The
correct?
office portion, yeah.
Okay.
So now we're looking at the office portion, which is the taxable side of things. So we have market rents that, the leasable areas that we have that are broken out for a grand total of the leasable area of $333,979. Potential rent of $3,817,000, and I will be rounding down. We're providing a vacancy loss of 9% for this property. Expenses are 7%, shortfall is $11 to come up with a net operating income of $2,899,000. $2,899,000 with a cap rate of 6.75%. Comes up with a capitalized value of $42,960,000. Our model rent for the office space is $11.42, which is very, very reasonable considering the location of where the building's located at and what else we have for market rents. The parking structure side of things. So there's a total of 497 stalls that take place within the building. I think our information is consistent with regards to the number of units. So despite the renovations that have taken place, the number of actual parking spots hasn't been affected based on the information that I have today. So using a monthly net unit stall of $138, we have a net operating income of $823,032. Using a cap rate of 7.5%, we have a capitalized value of $10,974,000.
That cap rate is a standard one
For parking structures. Yeah. Page 9 consists of the community shopping center. As you can see, there's many different leasable sizes here, and the rents vary depending upon where they're located at and the size.
So So are these model rather than the actuals then?
These are all model shows, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So the total leasable area for this portion is 135,874 to come up with 2,364,178. Using a vacancy loss of 4% for retail, an effective gross income of 2,269,611, expenses of 7% shortfall at $9, we come up with a net operating income of $2,061,823. Using a cap rate of 6.75%, we come up with a capitalized value of $30,545,000. The exempt portion of the income stream for the OFB consists of two areas. Because it took me a while to go through this process as well. So I got two OFB portions with the same sizes. Why are their rents so differently? And the reason why is because the 311 space for the city of Winnipeg is in the old office tower section of it, and the new daycare space is essentially a brand new space, which is new and it's modern. So that's why there's this discrepancy in the rents there, because of this quality of space.
And which one is which?
So the one that's 11,260 for 1448, that's for the daycare space. And 11,041, that's for the city of Winnipeg space. And that would match out with regards to, if you look at page 6 of my brief, the city of Winnipeg space on the 5th floor is 11,041 on the bottom. So using the same parameters that we used the last time, with 9% vacancy, 7% expenses, shortfall of 11, a cap rate of 6.75, we come up with that portion of the $3,407,000. So what I've done here now is on page 12, I've looked for daycares in the downtown area that would be of similar quality and finish. And so I came across two daycare centers within the city of Winnipeg. And so the first one was the 4th Street Center, which was the old European health spa. So what they're paying for their market rent for their daycare is $24. Okay, and that's right at the corner of 4th and York. And I just provided some there. So it's a 15-year lease that they have there of $7,795. And then the next lease that I got was at the Canadian Wheat Board, which is like the bumper crop early learning center. And their daycare space is $13.50. So when I look at our value of $14.48 compared to the newer ones that are being built, to me that seems like a lot for value. And you'll see the discrepancies in the values that we've presented, that we've put forward to the Board of Revision and Review. And you can also look at what the applicant has asked for.
So can you just compare those three for me, the two comps and the daycare?
Okay, so
The rents?
so what we have for the daycare at 4th and York, it's at $24 a square feet for $7,795.
That's a standalone building, correct?
That's a standalone building, yeah. And then the next one that I have at the Canadian Wheat Board is like similar in an office-like environment.
$13.50?
And $13.50 is their rent, and their leasable space is $5,500. I'm on page 14 of my brief now. So what I've done here is, so since 2009, where they purchased it for $67 million, there have been some changes and upgrades to it. What I'm showing here is, Doug is correct, the initial permit for the daycare came into existence in 2011. So the first permit here was for $300,000 of what they had done to the third floor plans. Also on page 16, what they've done is they've spent $1.7 million on making changes to the alterations with regards to replacement of elevators, universal washrooms, just general maintenance work that needs to be done for it. And then in 2010, shortly thereafter, they had purchased it. They had taken out another permit for $3.2 million. So if we're just looking at the permit values and what they have paid for the property since then, so, and when they purchased the property, it was in a situation where the economy was slowing and real estate prices are taking a dip. The total value is $71,928,000 of money put in based on our records here today, not including any sort of appreciation that would have taken place during the past 7 years of the property.
But you have not done a full cost approach?
No, we don't do a cost approach for,
Okay.
no. So now on page 18, so what I've done here is I've taken other market comparables of other food courts and retail areas within the downtown area. So I'm looking at Portage Place, I'm looking at Portage and Main. And what we've had here is for the different spaces and the different sizes, for the retail component of it, our average rent is $23.87. The model that we've used, our model value is $17,440. So market evidence is for comparables, which are very similar to City Place at Winnipeg Square, at Portage Place. Their average is $23.87. Our model is $17.40. On page 19, we also have some more at 201 Portage, just showing some other examples here. Once again, showing that our average rents, and with regards to works out to $30.90, and for the smaller spaces, for the food court, it works out to $83.02. So with that being said, and we realize it's an owner-occupied space, so now we're looking at what, on page 20, we are looking at actual OFB rents that are taking place, some that are connected with the skywalk, some that are not connected with the skywalk. Because the skywalk's an important aspect of it. People want easy access, people want to go walking through to avoid the weather. So what we have here is I have comparable properties on Graham and Carlton, 330 St. Mary's, and all these ones here, the average works out to $14.64. These are market rents that are sent to us, income and expense mailers that are sent to us from the 2015 income and expense mailer program that we used for our reference date for 2018. So so we have $14.64 for OFB space connected to the skywalk. For properties that are not connected to the skywalk, for OFBs, it is lower. The average rent is $12.92. So we have properties on Broadway, we have properties on Hargrave, 317 Donald, 250. None of these are. So there is a difference of just under $1.75. That just shows you the importance of the market rent of what we have here. And keep in mind of what we're using here, and when you're looking at the values sought by the applicant. Next thing to consider is large office spaces on
Sorry,
page.
just remind me what yours is again? I have to look
Yeah.
for it.
Ours is $14.64 for the skywalk.
No,
The applicant's is 11.
the one that you are applying
Yeah.
to the
The
building.
one that we are applying,
The average,
our average is 1242,
12.42.
which seems very generous based on the market evidence. So then the next thing to consider is because the MPIC building has a significant amount of office space in the downtown areas. So what other buildings that we have that are market leases that are out there that take place for OFB properties? So there's two that we have listed on page 21. So we have a large lease area at 333 Main Street. They're occupying 138,000 square feet. And their rent as of the reference time is $15.65. Then 191 Pioneer, both of these are close to the Portage Main. The lease for is January 1st, 2012, and that rent is $14. So both large areas, both connected to the skywalk walking system, significantly higher than our model driven at 1242, and they're large areas. Page 22 shows rental information with regards to parking structures. So if you recall, what we have here for parking structures is we have a parking structure rent of $138 net. So the range that we have is for the larger parking structures that are heated and unheated, there's a range between, and not including, so there's a monthly range that they show here of, you know, it varies from, say, as low of 140 to a high of 355. So what we're using is 138 net. That doesn't include the casual parking that can exist here. And here's a list of our stabilized incomes that we have here. So when we're looking at the $138 is per stall for heated and unheated. If you look at the 4th Street, which is completely heated, it's 164. You know, we have some other ones at 118, 122, 143. We seem to be within the reasonable range of that leasable area of $138 net per spot. So what I have here is I'm showing, so City Place lots. What we have here is for, on page 23, City Place Lot 4, which was outdoor parking, not structured, $175 for random parking. There's a wait list for that. Same lot on page 24, page 25. Across from the MTS Center, not connected to the skywalk north of Portage, at the corner of Portage and Ellis. What we're showing here, I do apologize for that. We have monthly scrambled at $195, monthly reserved at $225 from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and monthly reserved 24 hours at $240. And I apologize for you not being able to see that. I'm referencing page 25. Page 26 shows one of the pictures of the lot that I had just mentioned. Lot. So this is a parking lot at 173. Not heated, not a parking structure, right? And what they're looking is 24/7 is $230 for outdoor parking. Outdoor parking, not even heated, not structured, not protected by the elements for outdoor. And on other pages of my brief show similar examples of 230. The one here that I have on another one on Donald is 180. So here's our income valuation process. And bear in mind, I do apologize, it's covered over 2 pages. But the overall view that we have here is we have the OFB taxable, the parking structure, and the retail portion of it. Those are all taxable. And then on the page 31 is the exempt portion of it, which shows the daycare in the city of Winnipeg Place. And if I do remember correctly, our blended rate for all these properties is 7.14%, our cap rate. So on page 32 is our cap rate study for what we're using here with regards to the cap rates that we used for this property. What I have on page 34 is a condensed version of their income and expense mailers of what we had and what our assessed value is. So when we're looking at our total net operating income that we have, on page 30, we have $6,014,633. So when we're looking at the revenues that are listed on the subject property, we show total revenues of $15,011,331. Total expenses of $8,655,202 to come up with a subject property net operating net income of $6,356,129. Our assessed income is $6,014,633. So we're approximately just under $340,000 off in actual net operating income based on what they provided. So on page 37 and 38 just shows the long income and expense mailer that we received from the applicant, just showing all the details of the information that I've had here. And the point that I want to reference, and this is, maybe Doug could give more insight into this. There are portions of the building here, and you'll see this in this application, where MPIC is only paying $11 market rent for OFB space, and they have other portions that are significantly higher than the $16. So what I have noticed in situations within office towers that are operated by owned business owners or property owners that occupy space in towers, the book rents that they use for income approach to value is significantly lower than market rents to value, which is why I've gone into such great detail to show comparables of similar office spaces that are OFBs that are significantly higher than the $11 rent. And so, for example, here, if you look at page 46 of my document, and I realize it's very slow, it's only the $11 rent. It's on the top portion, it's on 100, but there's other aspects of the building here whereby, so if you look on page 46, it's $11, but on page 51, it's $15, and maybe that $15 is because it's a part of the retail space on it, but there's another portion in Doug's presentation that shows a $16 rent for MPIC space.
Sorry, page 36 is showing me what, where?
Page 46, 46,
46.
yep, is showing,
It's the next one, Mark.
45, 36, 46.
okay, it's, the one's on the bottom here, I apologize. It's just because there's a combination of documents, right?
And the 11 is?
On the top. So then there's the Machu Walk.
It's hard to see.
Yeah, I
That is what they're attributing.
yeah. And then if you look at page 57, 48 or 57. They're showing $11 rents there. The rest of my brief just consists of the large income expense layer that we've talked about. I'm open to questions at this time, thank you.
I have a few.
You know,
Imagine you wait.
We have all morning.
yeah,
Your very first page of your brief,
yeah,
you have under actual years built 1916, 1945.
yeah.
How do you have an effective age of 2018?
For new portions of the building that have been recently renovated.
And when was that?
What we've done is for that is, you know, and in fairness, when we did the inspection of the buildings, when we added it into the roll, we figured that this was a brand new building for this.
A brand new
And,
building?
well, that portion of the building, so when we add buildings to the roll and an addition takes place to the building, what will happen, it has a separate building, parcel building ID number. So for that, so when I showed the example of, we had OFB portions of the building, one was a $12.21 rent, one was a $14.48. That building that we had inspected to add the daycare to the roll was essentially a brand new building, and that's how we came up with the 2018, for that portion of it.
For that-
Because that space,
That space, so if I was a buyer, I would look at a daycare inside a parking garage and think, well, this is a brand new building?
that portion, for our purposes and our modeling purposes, that's how we have to do it, to separate it.
Okay, because you found it in 18, even though it was built in 2011, you
Well,
use 18?
What had happened is, the actual condition of it is near brand new, and that was a part of our evaluation process.
Okay, but we're right where we are right now, this looks like brand new, but this was built when, in the 60s?
Yeah, well, there's
Yeah.
more wear and tear.
So the 18 really, if I was a buyer, I wouldn't look at 2018 for any of that building, would I?
Well, but you would be able to distinguish some areas of the building that were brand new, newer finish, as opposed to other areas. Because what happens is, because this space was an old parking structure. It never existed, so it would be different than a portion of the OFB, whereby it's a part of the 10-story building, right? Whereby that building's tied into the original building. This part of the building was an old area, and it was created from scratch. And because it was created from scratch, that's why we're so aggressive with the age.
Okay, but the structure, is the structure original, or is it 2018?
Well, the structure, the original building's 1965, our current effective age, because there's various portions of it, is 1945. Could we have made that to 2016 unequivocally?
No, but the building, that space is sitting on, it's not sitting out in the air, it has a structure underneath it, that's
Yeah.
1916. So how could you make that 2018 because you put in a daycare?
Well, because that portion of the building's brand new. Because that area was, that no matter what I say, it's not gonna, we have to,
But no, I just want you to be reasonable, like, you can't say that because you put new walls inside a 1916 building, that portion of it should be
Do
2018.
you mind if I interject here
Yeah.
with a question?
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
because, I know it's slightly out of order, but the effective age is important in the cost approach in order to determine the amount of depreciation that is going to be applied, but you're not doing the cost approach, you're doing the income approach. Is the effective year, your allocation of effective year, has it influenced the value in the
Well,
income approach?
yes, it has, because if we had used an older effective year for that rent, so if we're looking, so the reason why the rents, there's such a discrepancy in the rents is because the daycare has the effective year of 2018, and OFB portion for the other portion would probably have an effective year of maybe 1970, 1960, and that's the portion where the majority of the office tower space is for the OFB.
Okay, so you're saying it's refurbished space, it's better space, and the appearance is better, all that sort of thing. Consequently, the lease amounts you're gonna get are different.
Yeah,
That's your argument.
that's exactly,
And the model takes the effective year into account.
exactly when it does the cost approach and when it does the income approach to value.
When you added the daycare, did you use the model, or did you just put a rent on it yourself?
We use the model by itself
You
because
put all the information back in again?
because we had to create a brand new building ID for that space. That's why when I created the brief, I was questioning it myself. And I'm speaking about this with knowledge right now. It's not like I'm coming here not being able to convey what had occurred here. I did the research, I did the due diligence, because I knew I was going to get questions about the discrepancy.
So your model will determine the model rent based on the effective age, you're saying.
Effective age, quality of the finish.
Okay.
I guess,
What about comps? The comps that you then, that are spat out by your system, are they also accounting for effective age?
Well, yeah, so what will happen here is like, not so much in the downtown area because the majority of the structures are built within the same period of time, the quality of finishes are the same. But if we're looking at properties that are in the suburbs that are brand new suburban office, you know, those rents would be in the high teens and early 20s as opposed to older buildings that were built, say, in the 1970s. So if I have a 1970s office area, which is on St. Mary's Road, that's right close to St. Vital Shopping Center, that rent would probably be in the mid-teens. Then subsequently, we have a property on 600 St. Anne's, which is a brand new 2-story office tower. Just, It's north of, south of Bishop Grandin, in between the Economart 600, there's a physiotherapist, chiropractic. Those rents there are in the low 20s, and that's strictly an OFS, and that's from the effective age.
And so effective age then is one of the factors that has bearing on what the model rent will come up with.
That is
It's
it.
only one of many, like location.
Yep.
Location and location.
If I may kind of, like, sorry, my rents are actually higher than I'm using on the office space than the assessor is. So it's not the rents I'm disputing, but it's the fact that you find something there that you've known about for many years, you've had the permit since 2011, and now all of a sudden, because you find it, you say that a portion of it is built in 2018, it just doesn't make sense. That's all I'm trying to say, it just, I've never seen that happen before. when
Well, you know
somebody
what,
doesn't
and in
build up.
fairness, we could have been aggressive by 2 years, like say if I would have made it 2016 of when we did the inspection. The bottom line is when we're looking at the cap rates with regards to models, we're within a 10-year window. So anything, like for a lot of these new office areas that are built, say since 2010, they derive a lower cap rate and higher market rents. And when we're looking at the valuation process, you know, Doug could say that he's being fair and generous with regards to his rents that are a bit higher, but at the end of the day, it's the entire encompass here. The higher shortfall, the higher the vacancy where there's no vacancy. You can't have it both ways, and that's why when I'm looking at this value here for this building of it's been paid for, appreciation factors, what's gone into it, the development of the downtown square, True North Center has been built recently. There's more demand for people to be closer there, and that's going to impact office rents on Portage and Main unequivocally.
In which way, is it gonna make them better or worse?
What's that?
In True North Center, like how is that going to?
I think
people are
that's- I
moving
think-
out of Portage and Main to go to North, so they're causing vacancies.
It's going to be causing vacancies.
They're causing lower rents because now people have to sublet their space.
Yep.
So how does that, and it's being built now, how does that affect the subject in April of 16?
That's what we're looking at. Is I'm just saying, ever since the Jets came back to Winnipeg, there's been more activity and more business activities and more things generated towards the Shed District.
Okay, the daycare you're saying is roughly, what, 11,000 square feet?
Yes.
And that would affect the effective age of a building that's 400 and some thousand square feet?
There-
Affect the cap rate, affect the rents? Is that what
No,
you're saying?
no, what I'm saying is that 11,000 square, we're looking at a building here that has an area of 492,000 square feet. So if we do the math here, if we go 11,000 divided by 492, this is 2%. The income stream from the daycare is 2% of the overall. So our cap rate of what we're asking for is not unreasonable compared to what's out there in the marketplace right now that we're showing.
Well, we're not
So
pushing it yet,
but what you're asking though, is you're trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Build up something that's not really there.
No, I'm just
No,
trying, I've
so-
never
So, exactly, so what I'm saying though, the overall impact of the 2018 effective age or the 2016 effective age is 2% of the overall income for this property.
I think that's
My main point, Mr. Philip, is a lot of people have office buildings and they gut floors. You go to 400 St. Mary, you and I went there, like 40% of that building's vacant. And the vacant space is gutted, it's taken down to the bare walls. If somebody moves in there in 2018,
Yeah.
I've never seen the assessment department put a 2018
Because-
age on it. No, let me finish, please.
Yeah.
This one here was done in 2011.
Yeah.
And you put 18 on it. Like, I'm not gonna dispute the rent or anything, I'm just curious, I've never seen that, and what your rationale is.
Well, the point is, the 2008, it's how our system works for adding new portions to the
Why
building.
wouldn't you
So,
put the date it was
but
added?
Doug, the difference between the two is that this was space that was refurbished and created from scratch. This was an area that was used as a parking structure where the daycare was. And for us, I could not, because what would happen is if I took that 11,000 square feet that was created brand new from the overall building efficiency, and I couldn't take that portion of it and attach it to the building code for the building that was built in 1916. So the majority of this building here built in 1916 is where the majority of the office tower is. I couldn't transpose that. So for that one portion, that's where we have the 11,000 square feet in the total package.
Maybe if you don't mind, I can shorten this up a little
Yeah.
bit by,
Oh, yeah.
by summarizing. Your point is that the effective age for that area, which Mr. Frolick says is 2%, ought to be a older value than a 2018. You're saying it's, no matter what, that's how the system works, and anyway, it's only 2%. So, is that what the board should take away with sort of the two arguments?
I just don't understand it, because you know it was built in 11, why would you put 18?
All
I
right.
think I mean, if I find something 10 years later, that doesn't make it brand new. That's all.
All right.
Okay, I'll go on to my next questions. On page 5, you talk about a sale. You talk about a sale in 2009 and how much it increased over 6 years. And then you've taken some permit values and added it to that sale of 66,672,000 to come up with 77 some million and say, look, we're not that far out of line. Did you know, if I ask you to turn to page 2 of your report,
Okay.
do you know what that sale entailed?
No, I do not.
Okay, did you check it at all?
No, I did not.
Okay, well, see on page 2 where you've got 333 St. Mary there?
Yes.
Okay, right to the left at the corner of Hargrave and Carlton, there's construction going on there. That's,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
That was 225 Carlton, which was part of that sale.
Okay.
Right above that, in the purple there, that's 260 Hargrave, where Tavern United and CTV is.
Yep.
That was part of the sale. Above that, you see there's a building with a rounded area there. That's 266 Hargrave, which is about a 7-story parkade, which was part of that sale. And what you can't see on your site here on Donald, 172 Donald, was another parking lot. That was part of that sale. So that 66 million wasn't just for 333 St. Mary. It included a 6-story parkade, it included 260 Hargrave, it included a parkade, parking lot at 225 Carlton, and another one at 172 Donald.
Do you have any of the details of that? Because no one within my department would have shared that with me. This is appealed every.
This has been brought up almost every year, Mr. Frolik.
Yeah.
Nobody's brought the sale up because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, 225 Carlton was sold, I forget how much, to True North.
Okay.
It's been there forever, like if you look at our files for TrialVest, who manages this property, they look after all those other ones.
Yeah.
So that's,
On this, sorry, go ahead.
that's the City Place surface parking lot, that one that we're talking about now?
The one where you can see the construction there?
Yeah,
Where True North is.
That's where True North is now.
yeah, so it's the old surface.
Yeah, and then right
City
across the
Place.
street on Graham, it's the old powerhouse, which was part of, it used to heat Eaton's and,
CTV and a restaurant in there, right?
yeah, no, Tavern
Yep.
United. That was part of the sale, and then just north of that is the old parkade behind 330 Portage. That was part of the sale. And the only one you can't see is another parking lot that was at 172 Donald.
I have a suggestion to make, and that is, the sale value would be influential if we were doing this on the sale comparison approach. The value of the building permits is marginally of benefit from the cost approach. We're not doing this building on it, correct? It's the income approach. Can we circumvent discussion about the?
Yeah, the only reason I brought it up, Mr. Chairman, is because it was brought up as a value. And it's you can't pinpoint that value just to this property. Okay, if I go to, okay, I already talked about the daycare. Page 7. Under that, on your office building, you've got 333,979 square feet. Do you know how much of that is MPI?
I could probably cross-reference it, but I think the majority of it is,
Yeah, okay.
like, probably 80%, 90%.
Okay.
Because the only portion wouldn't be, but it's not, yeah.
Okay, and your comparisons, I know that the rent isn't an issue, but your comparisons, the only ones that you had close were MTS, renting at 333 St. Mary and 191 Pioneer,
Yeah.
which used to be their buildings.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're not really market rents.
Well, MTS has been privatized for at least 10 years, 15 years.
But your sales are going with your rents, I think are going quite, but anyway.
My leases aren't that old for those properties.
I think it was 13 or something.
Yeah, well, MTS sold before 2013. That's been a private entity.
Sure.
It sold during the Philman years. And Dewar was in government for 4 terms, so that's it, 16 years there. So you're looking, MTS has been sold for in excess of 15 years.
I'm not sure about that, but
No, I'm
I
pretty
don't
sure
know
of
for
that.
sure. Anyway, so do you have any other Class B office buildings that have a tenant of that kind of magnitude, that much area?
Well, I brought the ones that were most applicable were the ones that I showed there.
Right at corner of Portage and Main and newer buildings?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you think there would be some risk involved if you were to buy this building? Like if MPI ever moved out, you basically have like a 90% vacancy, correct?
That's true.
Have any of your other Class B office buildings attached to a shopping center that's had trouble over the years?
In terms of,
The shopping center portion of it, like your cap rates that you have used
Yep.
are for singles sale,
Office
Class B
towers.
office towers.
Yep.
None of them are attached to a shopping center, are they?
well, if you're looking at buildings that have sold recently at 360 Main Street, that had a office portion of it, it was a shared sale, but that had an office tower with the retail component, which is a property of 6 stories.
But
Which is
it's
so-
that,
There's a shopping center there.
it's not even close to the magnitude of this one.
No, but the point is in the downtown area, you're sort of
Portage
limited.
and Main,
And so,
and, okay.
connected to the
But
skywalk,
is it a Class B?
what's that?
Is it a Class B?
One of the buildings that are there is a Class B. The Royal Bank building,
Okay, but that's not part of that rule.
well, it's not, but it's within that vicinity. It's attached to it, right?
Okay, but.
Because what will happen though,
360
but if we're looking at the 4 quarters of Portage and Main, you have 3 of them that are OFAs, and you have the one at Portage and Fort, which is an OFB, and if you go to 191 Pioneer, that's an OFB, I think, as well. I think that's a,
But
because I'm using it
360
here.
Main, 360 Main is a Class A building, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not disputing
All
that.
right. Okay, your shortfall that you're using on page 10, on this, the shopping center portion,
Yep.
have you looked at the rent rolls at all to see what they're actually paying?
Yeah, you had mentioned $15 in your brief, but I wasn't too sure how you came up with that calculation.
Well, okay, let's try to find one of yours on here. Well, we can go to the food court on page 70 of yours.
Okay.
That's just the food court, you have cam charges, say for instance for Subway. I know it's small, et cetera, but you have cam charges of $393.17 a square foot.
Okay, so,
So
no,
what
that's
are
a
we talking
monthly
about
charge
here?
per square.
Yeah, what are we talking about here?
Cam charge, like, okay, the shortfall is based on unrecoverable expenses. So it's supposed to be on what, if that space was vacant, what would be responsible to the landlord. So it's usually the cam charges plus taxes, et
Cam.
cetera. Cam, which is common area maintenance.
Thank you.
Sorry. And then property taxes, et cetera. But I'll try to find one that's not a food court.
But if you added them all up, are you double dipping them? Because they're repetitory. So there's one for 23 cents, one for 24 cents, one for 13.48.
No,
and
one
then-
is projected and one is the current budget.
Oh, okay.
So let's find one that's like a retail pharmacy.
What page?
Let me see, page 76. Their cam charges as of November 1st, 17 go to $26, but they're currently at $13.48. And then you have taxes, if you go down farther, second from the bottom of the line, there's $4.78. If you add those up, we're close to $20 on these.
Okay.
Where does the $9 come from?
That's the overall value though. The $20, that's what we've done with regards to all commercial shopping centers.
Not really, because Portage Place is getting $25.
Shortfall?
Yes.
I wasn't aware of that.
Kildonan Shopping Center, I think gets 19.
But, okay,
Polo Park gets 35.
yeah.
I
But
understand.
here's where the contradiction lies, right?
What's that?
Because is that you're seeking a shortfall for an amount for a building that has very low vacancy.
This is for the commercial,
Yeah.
the commercial portion. It is vacancy,
It has, yeah, about 5% or so,
yeah.
yeah.
That's all I'm applying it
Yeah,
to, Mr.
yeah.
Ray. But I mean, I just don't know where your $9 comes from.
Mhm.
And even for the office tower, you're using $11. If I could ask the board to turn to page 7. Sorry if I'm going backwards. But on page 7, you'll see in the income valuation, it has shortfall. And it says at $11 per square foot. And that would be based on 9% vacancy. So if we find an office tenant, the rent rolls are a bit, okay, let's go to City of Winnipeg space on page 64. And like Mr. Frolik mentioned, there's 2 spots here, but one is current, one is projected. If you look at the top line there for the City of Winnipeg, it's got common area maintenance, $10.59 a square foot. Then you go down and it's got taxes at $4.41. So right there, we're at over $15, and you're using 11. Do you know where the $11 comes from? Is that model?
That's model, yeah.
And then one more question, page 34. You talked about your net income being lower than the subject.
Yeah.
Does the net income that's shown here by the owner have any vacancy allowance?
No, this is based on what, this is what they've provided for here.
Okay, so if we took your vacancy allowance on page 30, 400 and almost 65,000 off of what they've shown here, it would be lower than what you're using.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just for illustration, I'm not sure why.
Well, at the end of the day, if a person was looking to purchase this property, they would actually look at what the income potential is right now, and they'd look at what the actuals are. And they'd be looking at values that were equivalent to what they're actually receiving.
But there's always a vacancy allowance done for the appraisal practice. All right, that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the food court, they seem to have high values on their net rents.
Yep.
But that's because they have access to the common area, they don't actually pay to rent
The eating area,
Eating area.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, but that also gives rise to high town then.
Yep, for sure. But when we're looking at it though, when we're looking at that portion of it, so we're not near or close to the $66 that we're factoring in. So when we're looking at our subject property leases and the high CAM costs, a lot of that revenue that's coming in for the square foot areas from these is they're taking a portion of that to pay for that. So those high rents that they're paying covers their CAM costs.
That they pay CAM in addition to that?
Well, yeah.
Okay, now this is classified as OFB. I presume that over the years it's been brought up to modern code, has it?
Yes.
Because in 1916, it's quite a bit different than,
Well, that, we still gotta put the original date that it was built, right? The first portion of it
Yeah.
that was built. So that's never gonna change. So like for the oldest portion of that building, the effective age that we have for it is still being super conservative at 1945.
yeah. But
So what we're saying is,
with an old building though, still you could expect higher maintenance costs than with
yeah,
a new building.
but they've also spent money on refurbishing it and updating aspects of it with regards to, I'm sure, the heating, the HVAC systems over the time. So I'm pretty sure they're not running an HVAC system from 1945.
No, no. It certainly doesn't look like the old Eaton's catalog building anyway.
And it's funny because when I think about this, I remember there used to be like a downstairs walkway from the basement of City Place to the basement of Eaton's. And there used to be a floral shop there. I don't think we don't have access to that anymore, do we? Does anyone know?
I don't know. I remember it being there, but I don't.
Yeah. So,
Now I mean, it's a prime location for a restaurant right next to MTS place,
Yep.
or whatever they call it nowadays. Does that affect the valuation of those restaurants? Like, I know Boston Pizza does a really good business on when there's events at the arena.
No, the market rent is what the market rent is, right? So like if we end up looking at the space, Doug, do you know what page the space is for Boston Pizza? Or maybe I didn't actually have it here. Just bear with me here for a sec here. We have Boston Pizza on my list.
They were paid $18.35.
Yeah, we're 35 or,
I
oh yeah, yeah,
18.35.
you're right. So let's go look at 6647. 6647 on our. So what we're using here is if we look at page 9 of my brief, we have A1 of 6,647 square feet. Our model generated rent is $14.89, and the actual is $18.35. So if we're doing the cross-referencing.
Okay. All right. Now, MPI basically occupies what, 80%, 75%
Yeah,
of
it's
the
huge.
office space.
Yep.
There was a proposal for them to have their own building and move out of there.
Yep.
Does that not demonstrate that there is significant risk to having the tenants that large?
Well, they're the owners. They're the owners of that building, right? So they would have to make a business decision on what's in their best interests. And so they would have to weigh the costs of moving with regards to the cost of building a brand new building.
Okay, I was gonna ask about the ownership.
Yeah.
Is that, what's this Trio West Realty advice?
They're the management company that manage the space for they're the ones who provide the income expense mailing information for us.
Okay, so they just manage it, they don't
Yeah.
own it?
Is that correct, Doug?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
All the applications though and that have been signed by somebody that works for MPI.
I was wondering the relationship there.
Yeah, the Privest has been there for, even before MPI opened as the managing.
Okay. All right, those are my questions.
Ms. Stevens?
Can you just, for me, to make sure that I got this, can you just give me your average rents for each section? Again, I just want to be sure, I was flipping around and writing numbers and I just want to be sure I
No
have them
problem,
correct.
no.
So for the office,
Let's just do the math here
Yeah.
right now, okay? So I'll go 3,187,109 divided by 333,979 equals, so $11.42, which I had here.
For?
11.43.
OFB?
OFB, yeah. That's for the original office tower.
this is page 7, correct?
Page 7, yeah.
Thank you, okay.
Altus wants 1207. So parking structure, you have it $138.
38, that one's good, yep.
And for the retail portion of it, because you got such a variety of rents, I think it's $17.40, but let me double check here. Yep, $17.40.
Okay.
And then for the last portion, which is sort of skewed
Oh, yeah,
because
that's okay, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Okay, good, because it was 1740 that I didn't have accurate there, so thank you. Now, I think you mentioned that the property was inspected by the city in 2016?
when one of my colleagues had gone there recently, so my guess is she inspected the property this year to confirm
For
the
the
daycare
2016.
space. We did here, the reference date is 2018. We've put an effective age of 2018 for that portion of the building, but that portion is very minute in the overall scheme of things.
Yeah, okay, so, but you haven't inspected it yourself?
Oh, I've walked through it.
But in the office spaces more when I'm
Well, you know what's funny is I actually worked at NPIC in the 1980s, late 80s, early 90s. So it's standard office, no different than what this is, what we have here. Maybe they had done some upgrades.
It's a bit of a dated inspection,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
If it's typical provincial government, do not allow that. kind of-
Yeah.
No, it's not, as, I've been in there numerous times as well, in their offices, and if there hasn't been any major upgrades, it's not palatial.
yeah.
Okay, and could you, I think you mentioned at one point the vacancy for the food court. Could you just, if you have it, do you have the actual vacancy for the food court and the retail?
Well,
Because I know that there's been issues in that mall in the past. With MTS, it might be better, but,
okay. 'Cause I know the actual office tower doesn't have any.
yeah,
Shut.
it's the retail and.
So what we have the 3-year average for it at 5.83%.
For the combined retail and,
Just the retail.
food court, or just retail?
Well, actually it is, the retail and the
combined?
food court's the same.
5.83.
Yeah,
So that would include all the various shops as well as.
yeah, that's for the entire aspect of it, right?
Okay.
Because we have it like, because that property type's under the community shopping center, right? So that includes both spaces. But I don't think vacancy is the same issue as it is now than it was, say, 8 years ago within the building. 'Cause it's a brand new feel to it, like it looks, it's new and modern. The finish, there's not a dated finish, because they did the escalators, they've made it a more modern finish of the space.
Also the effect of MTS.
MTS.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, you said that the overall, where did I write that down? Cap that you figured for the entire property, you figured was about 7.1, is that what you said?
Yeah, 7.14 that I had come across in my calculations.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
Just going back to the part of the vacancy that is attributable to retail and food court, you're saying combined, that's 5.83 over, as an average of 3 years, which years?
Okay, so 2013 it was 6.13. 2014 is 6.45. And 2015 is 4.9.
So that's 13, 14, 15.
And the 3-year average for the OFB portion of the office is 0 from 13, 14, and 15.
Can you tell me what influenced the drop in 15?
What influence? Like
The drop in vacancy?
well, our vacancy for community shopping centers is model driven. So when, this is not a site specific valuation as it would be a municipal board, right?
So these values are all model values as opposed
So
to...
the 4% vacancy loss is for all community shopping centers within the city of Winnipeg. But the numbers that I provided here for vacancy that finished up at 4.9 is for the actual.
Okay, these are actuals. Okay. Going back to Mr. Hardin's questions about the fact that the building is occupied primarily by the owner and the potential impact of that owner moving, presenting a sizable part of the building as vacant, that if there was such influence, that would affect the cap rate, is that correct?
Oh, for sure. And the market rents, right? Because if you take out approximately 350,000, you add 350,000 square feet to the marketplace for office space within the city of Winnipeg, that'd be a huge impact.
Has there been a sale in recent times of something of this size?
Yeah. See, with the sale information, it's, none of my colleagues had shared that with me. And so I can't really speak of that. I was based on the information because this is a property that gets appealed every year, no matter every cycle. And so, if a person was looking to purchase that they would want to probably have new leases in place if it was an outside buyer. Because right now there are no lease,
Okay, that's all my questions.
Just getting back to that, following up on that. If we're looking at a willing seller to own buy, if someone was buying it as it stands now, not because MPI doesn't want it anymore,
Yeah.
and so likely you'd be losing your major tenant, so wouldn't that affect what a willing buyer would be willing to give to that place?
Well, we'd have to look at why they buy it for, and if they bought it for, I'm sure they would buy it for reasons of using that office space, right? So a buyer wouldn't purchase that building if, without a guaranteed income stream of a leasable office space of 350,000 square feet. Like, if a person would buy it, they would buy it for a reason. You don't invest $70 million into property not knowing if you're gonna have the cash flow to support the interest payments on that.
So are you saying that on the one hand, a single tenant presents a little bit more risk in that suddenly there's huge vacancy on a property upon that tenant moving out? But in this case, you're saying that it is highly unlikely that the property could be sold by MPIC because there would essentially have
They
to
would
be a
put
single
themselves
tenant
at,
moving in?
they would put themselves at a tremendous risk or huge potential financial liability if they decided to move out of that space.
So on the one hand, the cap rate would rise because there is the potential risk of that huge vacancy.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's highly unlikely that there'd even be a sale.
Well,
Is that correct?
And if there was a sale for this property, the new potential owner would probably want some guarantees or some new leases in place to ensure their financial viability in the short term to get new clients. So it's dealing with hypotheticals, so, you know, we're dealing with a situation
It's
whereby.
called assessment.
What's that?
It's called assessment.
It is assessment, but we're speculating, right? You could go on.
But it was a near hypothetical.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's a factor. You look at the decision that Manitoba Hydro did with moving to the new office tower downtown, right? But has that had impacted? But interesting enough, you know, with those areas, like I don't know, there's still high demand for office space in Southwest Winnipeg. You know, still lots of demand for properties on Pembina Highway, and lots of value there, and lots of development.
Okay. Any further questions? No? If not, let's take a short break before we get into.
You guys
I
want to
have a
get a call?
rebuttal too, I'm not sure when you want me to do the rebuttal. After my presentation or before my presentation?
Well, I'll leave you to decide where the logic follows best. And,
Okay. All right, sounds
Okay.
good. Yeah, do we have time to zip over and grab a coffee?
That's exactly where I'm going. Mr. Bechman.
Okay, I'm gonna, actually, if I could do my rebuttal first, that would be
All
good.
right.
The rebuttal is mainly to deal with the shortfall rate for the shopping center portion and for the rate of for parking used by the assessor. So if I could ask the board to turn to page 1. At the very top there, I got page 10 of the assessor's brief. The shortfall used by the assessor is $9 per square foot. Then I got for Portage Place, 393 Portage Avenue, the assessor used a $25 per square foot shortfall for the retail portion. The next page, page 2, and I'm not exactly sure as to why the subject is called a community shopping center. But at the very top, it's got community shopping centers $9, neighborhood shopping center $7.50, strip mall $7. Then you got Polo Park and St. Child $35, Bodoni $23, Garden City $19, Portage Place, which has an office, it has underground parking, it has a retail space, and it has office. It gets $25, and then the Forks and Garden City get $19. Okay, and then on the next page, page 3, this is the workup for Portage Place, and you'll notice here that under the regional shopping center, that they're getting $25 shortfall. So that was my rebuttal to the shortfall, and then I could ask you to turn back to page 1. This is for the parking rate. The assessors used $138 per stall for 474 stalls, and as he mentioned, part of it is heated, part of it is unheated. And so I've taken some of the ones that he's shown on his brief, where you got 290, the first one, index number 3 is, I guess I should ask the board to turn to that page, if I could give me 1 second. On page 22 of the assessor's brief. This is where the assessment, I guess, department has used these rates to come up with their net rate per stall per month for different parking structures. So the first one at the top, index number 3, at the first table there, it's got 299 4th Street. There's 956 stalls, it's heated. The reported monthly rent is $280 to $345 with a 47% expense ratio. So stabilized 164. For their actual assessment, they've used 152.74 per square foot. Now that's almost 1,000 stalls right underneath 360 Main at the corner of Main. The next one, number 11, is 35 Albert. Now that's a mix of both heated and unheated. And it's attached to 201 Portage. Now it had monthly rents from 175 to 355, expense ratio of 30. For that one there, they're using $130.46 per month per stall. That's a newer building attached to 201 Portage Avenue.
Where does the 130 come from?
That's our model generated. So when we deal with the model, we pick the averages. So when we show our rent comparables here, we're showing everything that's in the system here. So when we create a model, we're always going for the midpoint. So what Mr. Becker's trying to present here is he's using our model generated ones, but the model generated one's not market. What we're providing here is we're providing market rents. And because we'll take all of them together, we'll take out the outliers, and we'll come up with the average. And so because we're using, these are the city rents that we've used for assessments, we're not chasing. It's just like when we have high bank rents. You know, there are bank rates out there that are like $40, $39. Well, our model is not $39, $40. Our model for banks are $33 because we'll take out the low ones, we'll take out the high ones. So to be putting here our model generated parking rents when we take out the outliers is not indicative of what we're looking at here. So, you know, like if we're looking at 35 Albert here of $130, if that's a city model generated rent.
Where does the 130 come from? Because I thought you were using 138.
We're using, but that's what Mr. Becker's presenting
Okay,
here.
where do I see the 130?
Okay, if I get you to turn to, okay, if you turn to page 7
Of?
of my rebuttal. This will be the first one. This is for 299 Fort. This shows that the rent used for the night was 152.74.
Uh-huh.
If you go to the next one, page 7 and page 10, page 9 and 10, last one. This is the assessment that was used by the assessment department. It works out to $130.46 a stall.
Okay, so
Okay.
what is the 166 that I see as a stabilized NOI stall per
That
month?
comes from page 22 on Mr. Froelic's presentation.
Okay,
What I guess I'm trying to say is these are the rents that are used to come up with their model-driven parking rates. And Mr. Froelich is saying that we use mediums. Well, if the 138 that's done for the subject is based on the model-driven rents, I don't understand why some of these other ones, like, for instance, 35 Albert, which is newer, right, the corner of Portage Main would get 130 per stall when the subject is being charged 138. And in my presentation, I'll show that the rate should be lower than the 130. But it's just to show the difference. And if you actually turn to page 6 of my rebuttal, it shows this is from the evaluation manual. It'll show their structures heated 120, structure unheated 90. That's the median. So I'm not sure why the subject is at 138.
Because it's a superior parking lot, because it's so close to the MTS Center. So that's,
Well, can I-
that's
hang
the
on,
average.
Yeah, let's.
Let me finish.
Yep.
Mr. Froelich.
I'm
We'll
just
leave
answering,
that
I'm
to your
answering the
question.
question.
Yeah. Okay, so then if you go down to 444 St. Mary, which is just down the street from the subject property, it has 521 stalls. And according to Mr. Froelic's information here, reported monthly rent is $185. This is very close to the subject property. And for the assessment, they use $103.50.
What page are you on, Doug? I'm sorry.
Page 1, the table there.
Okay. Okay, sorry.
Okay, now if you
Okay.
want to see the backup for that,
Okay.
that would be on page 12 of my rebuttal. And then the last two there are 363 Broadway and 393 Portage. 363 Broadway, again, is not far from the subject. It's a 15-story office building. It's being assessed at 120 a unit. And then we have 393 Portage, which is Portage Place. And it's all underground. It's 1,000 stalls, and it's underneath. That includes this portion that's underneath of the Great West Light Building, or the Investors Building there at 447 Portage. And this is all connected to the skywalk, to the MTS Center, and they're using 120. For the subject, it's an older parkade, it's a bit of each, they're using 138. As for location, I know it's attached to the MTS Center, but on a monthly parking basis, that doesn't really affect it. If people are renting it for the month, it's because they work in the area. If I'm at Portage and Main, where you probably got maybe 10,000 to 20,000 people working there on a daily basis, and the rates are a lot higher that they're asking, you would think that the assessed rates would be higher as well. So that's my rebuttal, so I'm not sure where we want to go from now. If Mr. Froelich has rebuttal to my rebuttal?
I have questions from that, yeah. Okay. So, do you have any advertisements showing that Portage Avenue charges, what does Portage Avenue charge for market rents for Portage Place?
Let's go to your number 22. Oh, for Portage Place?
For Portage Place, yeah.
Um,
Because if we don't, we're not,
No, I have for the other ones, but I don't have
Okay.
for that one.
doesn't that seem super artificially low? Like, I know you're saying this is our model generated rate, so this is $120 net
That's what you're using, yes.
for Portage Place. That's $120 net.
Yeah, I showed you in my rebuttal, I have your portion of your brief.
Okay. For sure, 363. Okay. But,
And if I go to 35 Albert, it says here, according to your evidence, that the asking monthly rates are 175 to 355. And if I go to 299 4th Street, you're saying that the asking rates are 280 to 345. For the subject, we're saying it's 175 and you're using 138. So I don't understand the expense ratio, how the subject can go from 175 to 138, but 299 Ford, for instance, can go from 280 or 345 down to 150.
With regards, so your question is that, like,
No, I'm just stating a fact. If you asked me if I had evidence, and the evidence I have is based on your information here.
okay. And so when we do market valuations, do we compare market rents, model rents, or do we compare market rents for parking? Because what you're doing here is you're comparing assessments or parking rents for the model, and I'm provided market evidence with regards to actual parking rates.
You've also provided it for some of the ones I put in my rebuttal here,
Well, I've provided a table of market rents.
which you would have got from their mailers.
Yeah, exactly. And I've provided actual advertisements showing what's being charged out in the marketplace for parking lot rents.
You've lost me, I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, all you're providing here is you're just providing our model generates to defend your parking, your position on the parking lot rent.
I guess what I'm questioning is how does your model take a rent from, say, $299 Ford at $280 and take it down to $156, and yet for the subject where it's getting $175 a month, you only take it down to $138. It's an older building, expenses are similar.
Well, the location's superior because it's closer to the MTS center.
No,
and has
that's
more-
for transient maybe, but not for monthly.
Well, but the point is, if you're beside see, when we look at our market rent generation, no, hear me out here, Doug.
Well,
So there's more on-demand parking for evening at $14, $12 for parking by the MTS Center on evening. So you're guaranteed 50 Jets games. How many events are at the MTS Center?
Okay, sorry, is your question,
No, this is
sorry,
my
so
question. This
is your
rebuttal.
answer to his question, are you saying that there is a discrepancy in the city's material from place to place with respect to the ratio between the advertised rate, which would be gross rent,
Right.
versus the net rent that is actually being applied?
Correct.
You're saying that ratio is radically different from one place to the next.
Yeah, and based on their numbers, like for instance, we're only getting like a 12% expense ratio or whatever, I'm not exactly the number, but these are the advertised rates that the assessors has put into his brief, and then I'm showing you what they're using as a net. The advertised rate, as he says, for the subject is 175, they're using 138. I don't know, I'm just questioning the validity of their data.
The 175 that we're using, those are for outdoor parking lots
Where's that?
that are not structured, the ones in my comparables here.
No,
My
this is
comparables
just-
that I've showed are outdoor, that are close proximity. They're not they're not heated parking, they're not in a parking structure. So that $170 that Mr. Becker's referencing, those are comparables of outdoor parking lots, not parking structures.
I'm not talking about those, Mr. Froelich, I'm talking about the ones you put on page 22 that are indoor heated parking.
Yeah, and so we have a range though, right? So we've looked at those ranges. So like say, for example, you're questioning how does a parking structure affect, well, the desirability for parking for my first two on Provencher Memorial, they're a lot further from the downtown area than they would be by the MTS Center of Portage and Main. So they're significantly lower, right? And other ones that are closer to our net value is where we're looking at here, because you're combining all the dates, all the parking income that's generated, because the desire for parking in the evenings and on weekends by 35 Albert is not the same as it is by close proximity to the MTS Center,
Okay, I park at the Richardson Arcade,
because that's where you work.
right, and every night there's a Jets game, you'll see at least 50 people coming out of that parkade that have stalls there.
Yeah, because they have a 24/7
And a lot of
monthly
them,
rate.
almost all of them are 24/7. It's
Yeah.
not, and a lot of them are Portage Place, City
But
Place.
the rents that we're having here, those are 27, and in my documentation I've showed, there's a premium to be paid for lots that are accessed to 24/7. Then, because when we do a model generated rate, like, and I have examples in my brief, where the difference between parking from 6 to 6 is $220 a month for outdoor stalls, and for outdoor parking 24/7 is $250.
Sorry,
And our models like-
for
yeah.
clarification, you're pointing out in your rebuttal that there is a difference in that ratio between gross and net from place to place. You're questioning the 138 that is put
Being
onto
placed
this
on
one,
this.
which is net.
Yeah.
What is the gross in that case, like, does the model have a gross rate as well as a net rate?
No, the model just has a net rate, because what we've done is we've looked at other parking structures that are that are downtown, and we placed a premium. So Mr. Becker had asked when he had referenced our model here with regards to structured heated 120. Well, our structured heated, it's a superior lot. So the reason why our model rent is 138 is because that's a superior lot. Everything here is on the averages.
In response to that then, is Portage Place not just as close to parking underneath heated if you get there by the crosswalk?
Well, I think at Portage Place a lot farther because what happens, my mom lives in Portage Place. When I go to Jets games, I park in my mom's place. It's a significant walk. You got 1 block away as opposed to 3-4 blocks away. Because when you're parking at MTS Center, when you're parking at Portage Place, the people who go there, they have to go past the food courts. So you literally have 3 blocks, and then you got another half block from the end of Ellis and Hargrave, right by the Air Canada Center. Then you got another block to gain access to where people are parking, because it's on the other side. So when you look at the Carlton and Portage is where the Air Canada building is. So that's the start of Portage Place. So to walk there, it's like 2 blocks, and then you got another 3 block away. There's 3 blocks away. And so when we look at parking rents, we have it as superior. So the reason why the discrepancy exists, because this is a superior location, because you have all the events that take place.
Does that determination of superior go beyond simple location? I'm thinking of access. How easy is it to get out of that location after an event at MTS?
Yeah, it's more based on location, not in regards to access, because when you got parking downtown, it's going to be busy no matter what. So our model's not that finite, but there is a distinguishable difference with regards to parking lots that are 24/7, 365 days a year, and parking lots that are Monday through Friday. So when we do our model generated parking lots, we're mostly looking at what daytime rates are 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. during normal working hours. Everything else which is gravy for the property owner.
You were questioning
Oh, okay.
before
No
I
problem, fair enough.
threw a monkey wrench in.
No, I think,
It's just getting spun around, I don't need a.
okay, well, but there was a question asked, you posed the question to me, why is there's a discrepancy?
Well,
And
I
I'd share
know
that.
that if I was gonna go downtown, if I didn't have a parking spot
Yeah.
downtown, to me, parking in Portage Place is easier to get in and out of. It's nicely heated, it's brand new compared to the subject property. Instead of going up, if you look at the picture, the spiral to get up into this thing. But I wouldn't pay $18 a month more to walk, because I had to walk an extra half a block. I mean,
Well,
I just don't understand.
it's a
why
half
that-
block versus 3.5 blocks.
Okay,
And there's a difference between that.
Okay.
I guess I just.
Do you have
I don't
further
understand
questions
why.
You know what, I
of
think,
Mr. Becker about the rebuttal?
let me double check here, please. So, just to confirm, model rents are different than market rents that take place with regards to parking lots. So you can't use a model rent as an actual because it's model driven. Is that a fair comment to make? So-
Can you ask me that again?
When we look at residential homes, right, we look at assessed values for homes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so at assessed values for homes, does the assessed value equal market value?
I don't know.
Sorry, what's the?
I don't know.
Well, where
what
are you
the
going with
question
this?
is, yeah.
The question is, or the point that I'm trying to get across here, is that you can't cherry pick model rents when you don't provide any market rents of any actual evidence,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
And we'll have next presentation. No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Harden, questions for the rebuttal?
Okay, so you're saying, that really what you're basically saying, first of all, do you know what the actual rate charged for parking?
It's a mix of monthly and transient. I have in my brief, I have their rent that they received in 15, and I removed the expenses.
Okay.
And I come up with an overall rate of around $120.
So we'll get that shortly.
Yes.
Does that, okay, maybe I'm ahead of my time then, as usual.
But you're not bragging.
It's your sharp mind.
Okay, we'll wait for that, for his presentation.
Okay.
Other questions?
No, I guess it's just a debate on how good is that for evening parking at the MTS center.
Okay,
So that's a debate to have later.
Ms. Stevens?
So, do you know the ratio of heated to unheated stalls in this?
No, I don't. I honestly don't. Like, I know at one time they called it heated, but actually what it was is some of the second floor space in the retail area, the heaters were in the section of the garage, and all the blowers would blow it into the garage, and that area would actually be heated from the exhaust from the furnaces that were working for the commercial section. So it didn't actually have its own independent heated space, but it was heated enough to call it heated. But I don't have it.
Okay.
I tried to get that, and unfortunately.
Yeah, because I'm, okay, and we're talking about 35 Albert as a comparable. Now that, to my knowledge, that lot is not heated, correct?
No, there is, I think, 2 or 3 stories,
Is there?
levels underneath that are heated.
Oh, underneath, oh, okay, I'm thinking of the structure
Yeah.
up above, okay. I know that it's this rebuttal, but am I allowed to ask the city a question based on something that was said here?
Oh, I think you might
I
as
can,
well.
thank you.
Otherwise, we'll lose the thought,
Yeah.
won't we?
So when the model is calculating the base rent for the parkade, you're talking about location, so is location what gets put, so is there any thought to the actual revenue that can be generated in the evening or on weekends, or is it just mostly the location that affects it?
It's the location,
Okay.
because it's impossible for us to
So
track.
track that, okay.
So what they provide, so the majority of the income and expense billers that we get, and some of the, because as you could see in my brief, we got some information that provides what they get, but we don't have any actual counts. So sometimes it gets lumped in. So for when we do the best we can with the information that we have available to us. Mr. Becker had been referencing $120 net that we use at Portage Place. My mom lives at Portage Place. Whenever I see my mom, I park there. They're asking for $250 for a heated parking structure underneath. And so
Okay.
if you're losing an expense ratio of $250, so you're looking, at
Yeah.
40%.
So it's just, it goes by the location rather than the
That's because that's the quality
expected
difference.
revenue, okay,
It's-
beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of the shortfall that you mentioned in your rebuttal for the shopping center,
Right.
and you were questioning, what, being listed as a community shopping center, and I noticed, where's your comps here? Do you happen to know what Winnipeg Square is? Because to me that seems, maybe some of these others didn't seem all that analogous that you were.
No, I don't.
No?
I used to do the work for 360 Main until the company Mr. Storyworks were bought it. I could have had the information, but I don't have that.
Okay, because that seemed maybe like the best comparable to me. Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Just to understand your rebuttal in summary, you are rebutting the shortfall rate used by the assessor
Correct.
by presenting shortfall rates that the assessor has used elsewhere
Correct.
that are comparable to varying extents.
In my opinion, yes.
You're also then rebutting the 138 by presenting some evidence of other values used by the assessor,
Correct.
lower net
Yes.
rents. And you just presented two places
For,
for the rent? Sorry, I'm looking at page 1. And it's got 362 Broadway and 393 Portage.
yeah, so I have those two plus, plus 444 St. Mary, 35 Albert, and, well, I have, in my rebuttal, I have the rates for all of those.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
right. Okay, all right. Okay, we'll see more of it then,
Okay,
presumably in your presentation.
all right.
Let's move on to that then.
Okay, page 2, basically it's the same evidence that was put forward by the assessor. Except that now the 2018 realty, I guess this is what it currently was at. Okay, this is, Mr. Froelic's asking for 88 million, but I'm asking that it be confirmed, the current assessment that's in the roll right now.
Which you have on your page
Page 2.
2.
Which is 2,994,742 exempt. That's the daycare and the city space.
Okay, down towards the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
Okay.
The total 77,248, 742.
Yes. And if I could ask the board to turn to page, I might go there right now, page 41 and 42. The original 2018 assessment was assessed by, appealed by us on behalf of Manitoba Public Insurance and was heard on December 12th. And page 42 shows that the board agreed with our evidence and reduced the value from 85,890 down to 77,248,742. So that's why we're asking that the value be confirmed. The only changes in our mind is the liability, the portion that's now exempt from taxation. On page 3, here's kind of a, I think I spoke about this earlier, about how it was originally that, then it was changed in February 18, and now it's back down to the 77,248,742, which was appealed by the city. On page 4, now, I guess some of the questions I had regarding the variant age, the original brief that the assessor brought in for the December 2017 hearing had the variant age from 1916 to 1977. Now it's 2018. That's one of the reasons I was questioning it. I couldn't see anything that had been done to the building to increase the variant age from 1977 to 2018. Even if it was 11,000 square feet of built-outs done in 2000. So that's, so it was first constructed in 1916, and it's had several additions, renovations, and changes over the last 90 years. And I had put, for the 2018 assessment, the assessor had calculated the variant age in 1977. So that's why I was concerned about the 2018. Now, if I could ask the board to turn to page 6. As I had mentioned previously, our market rents that I am using are higher than the assessor. So for the OFB, for the office building, the city assessments applied an average rent of $11.45 to a leasable area of 345,000 square feet of office space. The actual leasable area is 347,316. That's based on our rent roll. And based on the rents that I had in place, as you can see in the table there, I came up with an overall net rent of $12.07. The next page, vacancy allowance. So the property has been applied a Class B office vacancy allowance of 9%. We are using the 9% in our valuation. The next one is the shortfall. City of Winnipeg Assessment Department and Taxation suggests a valuation producing model a shortfall rate of $11. The actual recovery expenses in 2015 were at approximately $15. Shortfall rate of at least $15 should be applied. This is an older building, like I mentioned, it's like 90 years old at the time of the assessment. Actually, portions of it are 100 years old, and based on the rent roll evidence that we had supplied, the board agreed with us at the first hearing that $15 shortfall rate should be applied for the office. For management and other, we're using 5 and 2. Now for the cap rate, the assessor used 6.75%. The capitalization, we're saying that the capitalization rate for the tower should be no less than 7.5, as was accepted by the Board of Revision order December of 2017. I guess I should ask the board to turn back to that. If you look on page 42 again, page 42, it says where the board agreed based on the applicant's evidence, so they reduced it from 85,890 to 77,248,742. If you look at page 43, this was the portion of our brief that we presented at the hearing, and these are the numbers that we had used when we came up with our value of 77,248,742. We had gone with our market rent, we had gone with a 15% shortfall on the OFB, and a 7.5 cap. Bring it all up for the parking, we went with our parking rate and a 7.5 cap, and then for the shopping center, we used a 5% vacancy and $15 shortfall and a 7.5% cap. So that's how the 77,248,742 was developed or agreed to by the board in the original. And those numbers I am staying consistent with today.
Sorry, did you give different cap rates for the different income streams or same cap rate?
I went 7.5 right across.
All the way across?
All the way across. The parkade is 7.5, this is standard throughout the city for parkades. But for the retail and the office portion, I went with 7.5. I still think that the tower is old. It's occupied by one tenant for roughly, say, 80 to 90% of the building. And I don't agree with the assessor's position that nobody would buy the building unless they had rents in hand. If MPI moves out, the building goes 80 to 90% vacant. The chances of finding a buyer that's got over 300,000 square feet of vacant space is limited. There's a risk involved there. And because it's a government operation, it could be moved out at any day, depending on if they had bought that other building they were gonna move into. And then the provincial government comes in, and next thing you know, that's squashed. So to put a 6.75 cap rate on a building that's 100 years old and has 90% one tenant, I just don't think that's feasible. And I don't think there's any sales of this type of property that would justify 6.75. And that was my argument at the first hearing, and I'm proceeding with that as well. And just as a note, at the bottom there, I got for the 2018 assessment of the office portion of Portage Place, the assessor classified that as an OFC, which usually means an older downtown office building, and used a rate of 7.5. The subject was originally built in 1916. It's classified as an OFD with a 6.75 cap. It should also be noted that Altus Group suggested and was awarded an 8.5 cap for the office portion of Portage Place at the 2018 Board of Revision hearing. Page 8, this is where we do the retail portion. Again, as Mr. Full mentioned, we used an average overall rate of $17.41. Based on my review of all the leases in place and about coming up with different rents for vacant space, I have an average rent of $17.78 for the entire space. And on page 10, vacancy allowance, the city's used 4%. Based on my information, it was 5% in 15, and for 16, the actual vacancy was 5% in 2015. For the 2016, the board used 6.5. For our report, we've used 5%. Again, some of the rents that are in there, they're actually paying just a percentage rent. They don't cover any expenses because they don't make enough money to pay rent, but they don't want the spaces to go vacant. The Kohl's bookstore was one of them where I've used $11, but their actual rent is based on their sales, and they don't pay any camp charges, etc. So even though it says 5%, some of the spaces that are occupied there, they'd be gone in a heartbeat if somebody else would be willing to take the space. So that's why I've used the 5%. And for shortfall, the city's used 9, as I showed across on Mr. Fuller there. The actuals are closer to $20, and I'm using $15. And again, at the bottom under capitalization rate, I'm using 7.5%. This property is odd, like Mr. Fuller mentioned, it gets appealed every year. It's a different animal. There isn't many 100-year-old buildings that have a shopping center attached to them and a parkade. I know the location is good with the MTS Center there now, or Bell MTS Center. But there's other things to think of too, like now the NHL won't let people leave the arena between periods. You go in for the game, you stay in for the whole game, or if you leave, you're done. So there's places around there that are hurt by that, like Metropolitan Theater. People used to go there between periods because the beer was $2 or $3 cheaper. And they did a good, decent business. Now they don't. So you have to hire people to come in for 2 hours for a supper crowd and then send them out. And so it's not as lucrative as it looks. Wait, now on page 11 is parking. Now there are a total of 497 parking stalls. It's a mix of heated and unheated, monthly and transient. For the 2018 assessment, the assessors used a net monthly rent of $138 per stall and capitalized the net income at $7.5 for a value of $10,974,000. We have reviewed the financial and value of the parking using actual revenues and expenses. The gross parking was $474,988. The expenses were miscellaneous of $86.80, R&M of $27,248, and utilities of $33,000, which gave us a net of $405,837. And then there's also 170 stalls in the basement. It used to actually be old space that was used for storage. They converted it for parking for the hydro employees when they were building the new hydro building. And they pay a net of $150. They have 170 stalls and they pay a net of $150. So the total of the net of the other parcels, parking other than the Manitoba Hydro, we have come up with a total of $711,837 or $119.36 per month, and I've used 120. So my parking value is $9,542,000. So if you go to page 12, it's exactly as what I had showed you on page 43, what I presented at the previous hearing. We're asking that the value be confirmed at $77,248,742. That's my presentation. I'm open for questions.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes. First and foremost, Mr. Becker had mentioned a sale. So the sale for that property of the $67 million that I had referenced earlier on today, do you know the breakdown of that sale?
There was no breakdown.
There's no breakdown? You don't have any access to any appraisal reports or any information that had taken place prior to the sale?
No.
Okay, so you're saying that the $67 million consisted of the 4 parcels that you had mentioned?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parcels.
5 parcels, okay.
If you would actually go and look at the ownership on one of those other ones, it would show Manitoba Public Insurance, and it would have that same, like the Parkade, for instance. It'll have $66 million there.
Okay. So do you know who Kurt Wright is?
I don't think so. I might have heard of Rikis, but I don't know.
Okay. And you don't know anyone who works at BMO Capital Markets, Keith Jameson?
No.
Okay. The reason why I ask, and part of the reason with regards to Mr. Becker questioning my credibility with regard to that sale, I have an executive summary of an appraisal report that breaks down the actual sale. And the sale in question here is when we look at market valuations, we understand the process is a complex when it comes to looking at market valuation. And so as myself and other of my colleagues who have come here in the past, we've had this. So I have an appraisal report documented as of April 1st, 2009, and it shows the breakdown of the sales.
And are you going to give that to us as a rebuttal?
I could provide photocopies for you if you wish. I'm speaking about it right now because for me it's the
I would
issue.
take this as a rebutting then
Okay.
Well, I
of,
guess why I'm curious is because when I asked him if he knew anything about the sale, he said no. Now all of a sudden.
I had forgot about this. This is a complex property. Mr. Becker, you've taken it on appeal many times. This is the first time I've taken city place on appeal, so I'm going through a learning curve here.
panel members, are we interested in seeing this as rebuttal evidence?
I'm just wondering if it's rebuttal, if he was mentioning the sale price in his initial brief, isn't that evidence in chief?
Yeah, but the question is, he had a question my credibility about the evidence.
But this isn't, I don't have that in my evidence, so how can it be rebuttal?
Well,
Let's
The-
also
you-
consider the point, does this, to what extent does this have bearing on the income approach, which is what we're considering here,
okay.
as opposed to a interesting argument.
Okay. When we look at property valuation, to ensure, does it pass the smell test or whatever? Are we being unreasonable in our position when I come here to defend the value? And how I look at it is because even though arguments can be made that we shouldn't be including sales to take place, you know, we look at the direct sales comparison approach to value combined with the income approach to value to see if we're within the ballpark, to see that we're not, you know, $25 million off on a property which is worth $75 million. And so what I have access to is that that the city place sale was $66,747,000.
Okay, but before you go any farther,
The
if you have not done a full cost approach or a full sales comparison approach, which appears to be the case, and I asked you that
Yep.
previously, you are relying on the income approach here and only the income approach, as is Mr. Vetker. I would prefer that we just stick to that and consider
Okay.
that income approach material.
Well, I do appreciate that, and the reason why I'm bringing it up here is because my credibility was questioned with regards to the sale. I have the documents that support that the 4 parcels in question sold for
All right.
$81 million.
We will leave it there, I think.
Yep,
Thank you.
fair enough. So, in your brief, Mr. Becker, have you added the additional space for the daycare that was added onto the roll? Because we had
I
never.
think I've always had it in my roll, because they've always been on the rent roll.
Okay,
I used the rent roll, Mr. Falk, and Little Wheels Daycare was in there. That's why it triggered me, first of all, to go on for the exemption.
yeah,
That was back in 11, I think.
okay. So, are $11 rents common for OFB office space that are connected to the Skywalk?
I don't think they're unreasonable.
Okay.
There's a lot of vacancy in that area, Mr. Falk. As you and I did, we
Yep.
did a Class B on St. Mary.
Yep.
It was like 40% vacancy, now it's over 50.
Mhm.
363 Broadway had a 15% vacancy allowance.
Mhm.
175, 185 Carlton had a higher than normal vacancy. OFBs aren't doing good in that area. I don't care whether it's the MTS Center or not, it's an office building.
But the question is that are you have any comparable rents that show $11 office space?
No, I'm using 12 something overall.
Okay. Do you have any parking lot information on what the actual marketplace is taking place?
Just for the subject of what
Just
we
the
actually
southern
got.
property?
Yeah,
Is that conducive of market conditions?
as far as I know, yes.
Okay, do you have any examples of indoor parking spots that are leasing for $120 net? Or,
Well, I only have examples, the 120, no, the subject.
yeah,
Like, I don't have the expenses for Portage Place.
Okay.
You've used 120, so obviously it must net down to that.
okay. And so are the expenses that are used for parking typical of what takes place for parking lots?
In my personal opinion, it should be lower than that.
It should
Because I
be.
haven't deducted for taxes.
Okay,
You look on a $10 million assessment, your taxes are gonna be, what, another $200,000 to $300,000?
okay.
That has to be taken into consideration as well.
I get that. Yeah, because of the expenses that you provided here, it's only, the expenses are 8.8%. So it's well known that this is the parking lots provided here subsidized by NPIC to employees and of Winnipeg Hydro?
Well, Hydro pays $150 net,
Okay,
and I mentioned that, and I used their net rent of $150.
okay, they're paying $150 net.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the deal they made with them when they were building the building, but if it'll stay in place, I don't know.
Okay,
The lady at MTI that I deal with didn't even think it was heated,
okay.
but I inspected this spot with Mr. Rudy, your supervisor,
Yeah.
and
But do you have any market rents that show parking structures at $150 a month?
you know where I park is $3.25.
Okay, so, which is significantly lower than what you're asking here today.
Pardon me?
You're asking for a amount that's significantly
You know
lower.
what, I should be actually asking lower, like I said. If I was to take the taxes off of that, it would be much lower.
But they are subsidizing parking lots because
Who's
these are not,
subsidizing them?
Because the parking lots that they're charging Manitoba Hydro is not conducive to market rents. You said it yourself. You pay
$150 rent.
$320 a month, and they're paying half that.
But, okay, you take the 150 and you gross that up,
Yeah.
using your ratio of 45%. You're at 250?
Yeah. Which is significantly higher than, you know,
But I'm using their actual net, Mr. Fuller, because I
Yeah.
haven't.
but the actual rent is not conducive to them. Their actual rent, just like the $11 book rent for the space here, is not actual of what's taking place in the marketplace, because in your brief, you've shown no actual office space rents.
So your question here is what?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm starting to lose what the question was.
Oh, the question is both on the office side and on the parking lot side, Mr. Becker hasn't brought any evidence. He's brought actuals.
The question was, has he brought evidence?
Evidence. And if we're looking at bringing evidence at this hearing,
And your answer was?
I've used the actuals, or I've used what I feel is a fair market rent. Like, I'm not sure why you would question my rent when it's higher than yours. I
Yeah.
could have just said I can accept your rent.
yeah. But what you've done here is that you've taken bits and pieces of other parts to justify your position on rent. Like, you're using our 9% vacancy for OFB, but the actual, why aren't you using actual vacancy for the office tower right now? If you wanna use actuals, there should be no vacancy on the office tower portion.
It's
the
it's
what
always
we-
willing buyer, willing seller.
Yep.
If I was to buy the building, would I expect to have zero vacancy? No.
But would you?
Would I expect to get what everybody around there is, which is 15 to 25? Yes.
Mhm. No further questions.
Okay, you were referring several times to Portage Place.
Yes.
I did that here, and I believe the above-ground portion was an agreement between the city and were you representing them at the time?
No, it was Kerry Reimer, but it was actually reducing to 31 million for the commercial portion,
Yeah.
and Sid Story was fighting
The
the
parking lot.
parking lot.
So
And as
we-
far as I know, that got confirmed that,
We did the parking, yeah, we actually did the parking lot, but the structure itself was an
That was
agreement
agreed,
between the
yeah.
parties. Okay.
the evaluation sheet that I have in here is what it was originally. It doesn't show the agreement that they came to.
Yeah, okay. Now, in terms of the parking income there, would you know that if the parking, is the parking lot part of, included in the provincial government inventory of parking spots, or is it separate?
I don't know. I didn't know there was such an inventory, so I don't know.
Well, there is, eh?
The crown spots are not, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, because then they use kind of a global average here for that. At least it did at one time. Okay, and so you're using the actual revenue generated, so that revenue, that 475,000 would include casual parking
Yes.
as well as the
As monthly.
monthly parking?
And that was gross, and then I added the net for the hydro spaces.
Okay. All right, those are my questions.
Ms. Steele?
So just while we're on the parking piece, so we're talking about subsidizing, and you were discussing back and forth hydro, but what about the MPI employees that are parking there? Does MPI have an employee parking rate, are you aware, for all of their, wherever their staff are and wherever they park?
I don't know.
So you don't know whether they're subsidizing this at all?
No, I don't, sorry, I don't.
So I suspect if they're unionized, they have probably an employee rate for parking. Okay, and you asked about the evening parking. So just to get my head around this, what I'm seeing as the difference between what you're presenting to us and what the assessment department has presented to us is that you are providing actuals, and that includes the shortfall, the parkade and the rents.
Yes.
The city is using a model with some comparables that they provided us, and then there is a difference obviously in the cap rate, and your contention is that that is because of the age of the building largely?
Well, and the configuration.
Configuration, okay.
Yeah, you know, it's attached to a shopping center that it's actually not doing too bad compared to what it used to. There was always the stigma there that it was.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I think that's all I had, thank you.
I have no questions. The summaries? Does anybody care to summarize?
Yeah. When we look at market valuation for the income portion of value, we look at what is taking place in the marketplace for actual rents of comparable properties in the area. When we look at parking lots, we look at what the actual's taking place for parking lots. We've taken a market valuation process whereby, yes, the building is old, but yes, the building has a large footprint of the building. If we look at the footprint of the building, the leasable, it's hard to say, but they have a larger footprint of it, so it doesn't have some of the challenges that some of the older buildings have within the city of Winnipeg. If we're looking at an OFD building, they would have more challenges in the subject property that they have. When we're looking at the building and its performance and what takes place in the marketplace, we're looking at what's taking place for actual vacancies. And I understand the vacancy is, very low for the building, and I understand that we use a 9%. But when we're trying to do the valuation process for this property, we've got to actually look at what's happening. So you got to expect some vacancy to take place if a person's going to buy it, but you can't automatically take the aspects of the valuation process which suits the position to lower the assessment. When we're looking at the cap rates, the department has provided a list of cap rates here. Yes, sure, it's not common for the Winnipeg marketplace to have a large office tower beside a shopping center, but in larger markets throughout the world, it's very common to have that, because what happens is you have, with the NPIC, you have an organization which probably has maybe between 500 and 1,000 people working there. You got a guaranteed access to buy stuff at Shoppers Drug Mart, to go to the liquor store, to use their banking services. It's actually quite common. So it may not be common in other places in the world, but it's actually an asset to have a large office tower beside a commercial center. We looked at the aspect of the actual sale. So as we've come here and showed actual parking lot rents, actual market rents for comparable properties, and it's known that the $11 book rent that's been presented here is a subsidized rent. They're charging $11 rent for the subsidized daycare that they have listed on the income and expense mailer. Well, you have government organizations that do things for public policy purposes that are being proactive for the good of society, but here we have a situation where they're trying to minimize their tax liability and we understand why, because they want to improve the bottom line. So you have subsidized parking in my eyes, you have subsidized office space, you're showing market rents that are lower than actual conditions that take place, and which is why I believe that the assessed value is taking place. And as a final note, in our initial assessment that we had presented here at the beginning of 2018 of $85 million, $890, and why we're seeking the increase of $87,866, that didn't factor in the new space that was created from the daycare. And the daycare wasn't added because, and I had mentioned earlier on, initially our square footage was around 480,000 square feet, and now we're looking at 492. Thank you.
Mr. Baker?
Just a couple of comments. It is an old building, as I mentioned before. There is not a lot like it in Winnipeg that are old like this, that have a mall like the subject property. It's government, 80 to 90% of it. They've already been closing claim centers. The new government wants to cut back on this and that. There's no guarantee that that building is going to be completely full of medical public insurance. If I was to look at the market for vacancy instead of using their standard 9%, I could have brought in several buildings right in that area that were higher. actual vacancies of 15 to 20% in the reference statement. So I used the assessor's rate of 9%. Assessor says that they've increased the value by roughly 2.7 million for 11,000 square foot daycare that was built in a parkade. I'm unaware of any daycares that are worth 2.7 million, especially in a parkade. The parking rates, I showed the board what the asking rates were according to the assessor's evidence. He actually presented the evidence to show what asking rates were. And then I showed the board what the city was using for those properties. Why it would go from 285 down to 120 and not for the subject from 175, I don't understand. But I feel that the valuation that we put on it is fair, and it takes into the age, the condition, the configuration of the building, et cetera, and I asked the board to confirm the assessment.
Thank you. So that deals with the valuation part of today's hearing. We have classification and liability. Is there really any question?
It's his appeal.
Sorry, yes, your appeal.
I have no idea why he's appealing it.
You know what, I think we had just checked off the boxes because the classified and the liability portion of it, I may be speaking out of turn here, that's been addressed by changing the daycare space. So we had changed it, so.
I wasn't aware that they were both under appeal.
Yeah, you know what, and I didn't realize that either, so.
So you're saying that you're actually just seeking confirmation?
Confirmation.
Nothing else? All right. That then.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Merry Christmas and best
Merry
holidays to everybody if I don't see you.
Yeah.
You too.
Mr. Harton, I think I'll see you next week.
Yeah, sounds like it.